require us enlarging the pool of young people who are able to go on to higher education. And that means focusing in on young people early enough in their K through 12 career to indicate to them that it's going to take more than just a high school education in order to get these decent jobs. And they need to be thinking about what they're going to be doing beyond K through 12 at an early time. It's going to be a 2-year community college or a 4-year institution, going into the military, what have you. They have to start thinking about that early in their career so they can begin to plan and take the courses that are necessary to get them ready for that next step. It's also going to require a partnership. The partnership is being demonstrated here today between the education community, between government, between universities, between colleges, and with business. Because only with that kind of partnership are we ever going to be able to meet the challenge. We're not going to be able to sort of go off on our separate tracks and say we're going to deal with this problem in our own way. We've got to have dialogue, we've got to have communication. We have to understand what the other elements, the other factors are doing, and how we can bolster that, how we can support what's going on. And that's why I'm seeing so many good ideas come out of this group. I was very pleased to see the white paper that was distributed last year to talk about some of the things that could be done. There's some very specific ideas in there that I think we ought to focus in on. We're going to spend a few moments talking about it. But in order to try to approach this thing, there's certain solutions that I think we need to think about, particularly those of us who are concerned with K through 12. The first is we need to work on encouraging parents to participate in the educational process. We can talk until we're blue in the face about excellence in education, and indeed our vision is achieving excellence in education to make Virginia's school system the best in the nation. We can talk about excellence until we're blue in the face, but until we get the participation of some specific people, it's not going to work. The first group of people who have to participate, who have to be concerned, are our parents. Because the parents are the ones who shape those young people, give them that little boost at home that they need to realize that what they're doing is important. Parents have to participate, they have to be involved in the educational system. And that sometimes means taking some steps that may not be popular for young people. It means cutting off their television set sometimes and say, you're going to do your homework before you start looking at Dallas or Alf or what have you. The point is those things may be entertaining, but they're not going to help you when you have to fill out a job application form or take a test or decide what your future is going to be all about. Parents can do that. We need to encourage our parents to participate in the educational system, to feel it, so they can feel comfortable about coming into the schools and participating and to get them involved. And that's certainly something that we're going to be committed to, is to get our parents involved. We also have to be concerned about making sure that we have the best possible teachers and administrators in the school system. Because what really makes a difference is what goes on in that classroom between the teacher and the student. And also from the administrator's point of view as to the support they can give that particular relationship. We're going to be encouraging people to go into teaching, to take part in teaching, because teaching is a profession that really is on the front line. Teachers have the responsibility of shaping the most precious natural resource we have, and that's our young people. And we ought to be behind our teachers to give them the support they need, because you're the ones who are going to determine whether or not Johnny or Jamie is going to have that interest spark in the 2nd grade, the 3rd grade, the 6th grade, or the 7th grade, to want to go on and take advantage of the opportunities that will be presented to them. So we want to make sure that the teachers and administrators are very much a part of this, because you're the ones who are going to make the difference between failure and success. We also have to be concerned about stressing basic skills, and that means making sure that all of our young people are able to read, to write, to think in a reasonable and analytical way, to understand the global perspective of what's happening in the world today. Larry, from an economic point of view, is going to tell you that we cannot operate in a vacuum here in the Commonwealth. We need to be concerned about what's happening around the world. What's happening in Eastern Europe, for instance, is very important to us, because the fact that they're now coming out from under their communist domination means that they're going to be looking for opportunities to trade and to have relationships with other nations and with other states. It presents a terrific opportunity for those of us in this area to promote international trade. And Larry, I'm sure, is going to go into that in some detail. But the point is, our young people have to understand how what's happening around the world impacts on the quality of life that we're going to enjoy here in the peninsula throughout the Commonwealth. So we've got to stress those basic skills, reading and writing, and an understanding of the global perspective. We also have to stress math and science. That's why I'm so very glad to see that some of the workshops we're having, a lot of the discussion here is focusing in on the need to have more training, more interest in the scientific, the technical, and understand how important it is. And we cannot wait until they're in the 7th and 8th grade, although obviously we're going to be focusing in on that. We've got to talk about what we have to do to our curriculum to make sure we can spark that interest in our young people in the 2nd grade and the 3rd grade, so that they don't get caught up in that feeling that too many of us have, and that is that math and science are just too difficult. We can't master it. That's for somebody else. It's for the gifted kids, and we can't deal with it. That is not the case. We've got to do something about the public perception that math and science are too tough. They are not. The point is we need to approach the way we teach it in a way that makes it interesting, that encourages our young people to get interested in math, and how it impacts on their lives. And that means looking at how we teach it, and that means making it more of an applied approach, as opposed to just the learning the multiplication tables, learning the rote kinds of formulas, but understanding how math and science impact on your everyday life, and making the teaching of math and science something that's exciting. Indeed, I hope some of you have been able to read the article in Newsweek magazine this week that's focusing in on how we ought to go about teaching science to make it more interesting, to make the young people want to go to science as opposed to running off in the other direction. That's a major task, but it's something that we cannot walk away from. Because if those young people are going to be prepared for the 21st century, they have to be comfortable with math and science. Because people elsewhere in the world are doing it. They're putting in time, they're putting in effort, and their young people are prepared. And if our businesses are going to stay competitive, we have to make sure our young people are prepared for math and science. We also have to make sure that we develop good working relationships and good programs on our vocational and technical programs in schools. I'm proud of the fact that the Board of Education is currently involved in working with a number of you who are involved in vocational education to restructure it and to make it more relevant to what's going on in today's world, to make sure that you get the support you need to present those programs, and that those programs have the kind of background and the basic skills that are necessary to prepare our young people. Because whether you're in vocational ed, whether you're in the academic track, or whatever you call it, your individual division, the bottom line is you have got to have a sound basis in math, science, reading, and in writing. So that's why I'm glad that we're trying to work with you to come up with a program that will reflect that reality. We're also concerned about the fact that we need to get more women and minorities into the scientific and technical fields. We have got to reach out. The figures I think I've seen indicate that maybe 28% of the scientists and mathematicians are women and only 2% are minorities. The point is those numbers do not reflect what the demographics of the workforce are going to be. And that means we're going to have some aggressive programs in place to make sure that we can encourage minorities and women to go into math and into science. And that, once again, means changing some public perception. Because for too long, we've been encouraging these groups to go in the opposite direction. Math and science don't present opportunities for you, and you ought to be thinking about other things. And I've been hearing about little specific examples. The comments the teachers can make to people can do a lot about determining whether or not they've got that motivation to go on. We've got to encourage minorities and women to go into these areas because we need it. Once again, not only because it's morally correct, but from a financial, from a business, from a profit point of view, we need every resource available in order to be competitive, in order to keep our edge as the leader of the free world. And that means educated workforce. We're also concerned about making sure we do all we can to get the business community involved. And that means creating new programs such as the one we're participating in today. We have to let business know that we are prepared to work with them in a meaningful manner, in an open, ongoing dialogue, to work together on a common problem. And that's why I'm so glad that in this particular area, you've had that interest demonstrated by the business community. And I think that one of the things we're going to try to do is to pick up some examples of what you're doing here, and try to spread that across the Commonwealth, to see if we can get other businesses involved in working with our educational system. Some of the recommendations that are coming out of this particular white paper and your discussions, I think, are worth me spending a few minutes talking about because I think they're so very important. For one, the establishment of the regional middle school career program that will focus in on the scientific and technical areas, where schools will be visited by scientists, by engineers, by people from the private sector, who will spend some time with our middle school students to let them know what's available in the job market. I think that's absolutely on point. And I would hope that those of you who are in the educational system would be actively involved in that program to make it work. Because we've got to let our young people see some role models of what's going on in that area, what's being done, what the opportunities are for them, and So I would encourage you to support those kinds of efforts. I would also support the approach for the Regional Math and Science Summer Program, which will focus in on some of the underachievers to motivate some kids in the 7th, 8th, and 9th grade who may not be doing as well as they can be in math and science, and encourage them to participate in this program, to motivate them, to give them the inspiration. You'd be amazed how much of a difference you can make by showing a little effort, a little concern for these young people, to let them know that if indeed they put forth that effort, that there will be something at the end of that rainbow that could make a difference in their lives. And I'm glad that you're doing that, and I encourage that to move forward. Also, the mentoring programs that I understand are being put in place that will allow, I think the Chamber of Commerce is going to be working with you on some mentoring programs so that there will be an ongoing relationship so that people will understand what's happening in the business community and how they can be a part of that. Those are the kind of efforts that will make us achieve our goal of excellence in education, of a full working partnership between the business community and the educational system. But all of this rhetoric, all of these plans will not work unless those of you who are in the educational system are committed to it. Because you're going to make the difference. You're going to be in the classroom with these young people. You're going to be the ones answering their questions about, well, gee, do I really have to study math and science? Do I really have to be concerned about analytical thinking? Yes, they have to be concerned. Because if they're going to get a meaningful job, they have to be prepared. And they also not only have to have the basic skills, but they also have to have the ability to adapt to changes in the workforce. We have to become a community of lifelong learners. Because the job qualifications, the skills required are going to be changing almost on an annual basis. And now people have to be prepared to adapt to those changes. It has to be a lifelong learning process. And that means you're going to have to be involved beyond the K-12 experience, working with community colleges and others to participate in making sure that those people who are already in the workforce are able to come back and be retrained and retooled to have the skills that are going to be required down the road. It's a big job, but it's a job that can be done. And if there's nothing else that I want to stress to you, it's a partnership, and it's a partnership that cannot work unless you are actively involved. You can make a difference. We can talk about policy. You're in the classroom. You will make a difference. And so I would urge you to help us in any way you can to participate, to welcome the business community, to work hard with these young people, to make this program a success, because you will determine whether or not our future is as bright as it can be. Thank you for allowing me to spend a few moments with you, and I look forward to getting a chance to talk to each one of you individually. Thank you very much.
Dr. Templin, Secretary Dyke, distinguished guests from the academic community, we found out two things this morning. One is why I don't eat lunch, and the other is why I don't quote philosopher. I don't do either of them with the skill of Secretary Jim Dyke. It's an honor as well as a pleasure to be here this morning with you, because sometimes those of us in the world of economic development don't get the invitation to speak before groups as distinguished and learned as this group. And it's an honor to be able to come, although I must admit a bit of a challenge when those of us who are involved in the economic development side have to come and truly have our talks and thoughts scrutinized by those with the training and intellectual capacity to do it on a regular basis. I've had a little training, though, and bring I think, a unique perspective to this job. Coming to economic development from, in part, the educational community has given me, I think, a unique opportunity to contribute in the economic development field. And having been trained in my educational capacity, that is, as a member and now as chairman of the State Board for Community Colleges by someone as renowned as Dr. Templin, I think it honed me a little bit. But I'm more than honored and pleasured. I am excited about being here because of the opportunity to come and talk about a subject that is very dear to me and what I believe that the economic development of the Commonwealth is all about. So I'm here to bring good news. creative, tremendously well-educated workers for our American workforce, our Virginia workforce, and our Tidewater workforce. The bad news, we are not doing a very good job of preparing innovative, creative, knowledgeable workers for our American, Virginia, and Tidewater workforce. What? Good news and bad news is the same yes. We know that we create here in Virginia, from our educational system, tremendously talented and bright and well-trained students. But we've also found that we fail a lot as well. And that's our task. It's to build on our successes and lift them to cure our failure. What we talk about this morning is something that I'm excited about because it is so important to the economic future of all of us. It's the need for secondary schools, higher educational institutions, and the business community to work together in partnership to build an effective workforce today for the 1990s and beyond. The problem we have today is a current problem as well as a future problem. We need to address the inadequacies in our current workforce as well as those in the future workforce. You know, for many years, our workforce depended in large part upon a demand for workers for jobs that were relatively unskilled. They carried out the more menial functions of the manufacturing process. We also know today that there are fewer and fewer of those jobs available. As our industries move towards a more service-oriented and more highly technical-oriented production, we find that the need for the unskilled job has been reduced. Today, in night workers at McDonald's, to the people that sweep the parties. And we know as well that you cannot support a family. Indeed, you cannot support yourself working behind the counter or sweeping the floor at a fast food restaurant. No, we have a great gap. And that's what our task is here as you start today to address. How do we begin to bring those who would only fill the jobs that cannot support their family and bring them into the workforce that we need for the night? A major study conducted recently by the Virginia Small Business Advisory Task Force, using focus groups from throughout the state of the leaders of a great number of small and medium-sized businesses, made findings that were deeply disturbing. Here's what they found. They found overwhelmingly that these companies believe that their most significant problems were, one, a lack of qualified entry-level workforce, and two, a lack of basic and occupational skills. The study stated, and I quote, employers express that they are experiencing extreme difficulty in finding entry-level employees with basic skills, i.e. reading, computational, and human relation ability, end of quote. Additionally, nearly two-thirds of the participants in that survey found that availability of quality labor was the number one inhibitor to the expansion of their business. And we know that the tremendous economic success of Virginia over the last few years has been fueled not so much by the importation and attraction of new businesses to Virginia, but well over 60% of the new jobs created in Virginia in the last 4 years have been created by the expansion of existing business. However, the problems of an inadequate workforce are not limited to small and medium-sized businesses. Studies have also shown that large multinational corporations are being forced to export many of their high-skilled and high-paying jobs overseas because they simply cannot find qualified workers in the United States. We think of exported jobs as being cutting and sewing of fabric, of assembling plastic trinkets in Hong Kong, but no, jobs being exported today are highly skilled jobs. Unless you think it is something limited only to Virginia, let me quote from the editor of a Brookings Institution study of the American workforce, released and reported 2 days ago. He said, "Our problem is not that we are drowning in a sea of lousy jobs. Rather, we have a surplus of workers whom employers must consider lousy. That is, workers who are relatively unskilled. Specifically, businesses have consistently complained about the lack of math, science, foreign language, and computer training among our workforce. As we have noted, a growing number of jobs in our economy will depend on technical skills derived from these basic skills. Having these skills will provide the flexibility and ability to retrain and adjust to the dynamic workforce required to meet the demands of the 1990s. This leads us to another important basic deficiency in our current workforce, the lack of an adequate retraining system. Studies tell us that the average worker entering the workforce today will hold 6 new jobs during his or her career and must be retrained at least 3 times. As we continue to move into our high-tech service sector economy, more and more workers will need to be retrained to fit the growing demand in many areas. Partnership between businesses and educational institutions will provide a critical link to fill this vacuum. It is essential to create this cooperation, to provide this missing link, these skills that are deficient in our current workforce. Dr. Temple, what you and members of the academic and business community, which your industry task force have done through your innovative efforts of this white paper, and what you are doing today will help begin to fill this gap that so desperately needs to be addressed for the future of Virginia business. You have established the beginning of a mechanism that addresses our current deficiencies in math, science, and technical skills, and badly need mentors that can provide incentive for your students to initiate and continue their improvement. One of the most compelling reasons why we so desperately need this partnership is because we can look out to the constantly shrinking world around us and see tremendous results from what other countries have done along these lines. In West Germany, they have one of the world's best apprenticeship programs called the dual system because it is jointly operated by industry and the vocational education institutions of every German state. German children are introduced to a working environment, often before the age of 10. By the 10th grade, about 80% of these students enter the dual system. They will choose from among hundreds of occupations and acquire an apprenticeship in a private company in their chosen field and spend the next 3 years developing their skills, 4 days a week on the job to gain practical skills and 1 day a week to gain theoretical skills. The system has been extraordinarily effective in driving one of the most productive economies in the world. Now, while I'm not advocating such a rigid system in our country, the basic case for industrial and educational cooperation is so compelling that we have much to learn from our competitors. Similarly, earlier this week, I was in Galax, Virginia, a small town in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains in southwest Virginia, to dedicate the opening of a state-of-the-art glass and mirror manufacturing firm. In fact, the most technologically advanced mirror manufacturing firm in the country. As I walked through the plant for an hour and a half with Chairman Bobby Frost, I noticed that not a single piece of the high technology production equipment in that plant, with the exception of the water treatment facility, was manufactured in the United States. I saw machines manufactured in Switzerland, in Italy, in Germany. Not a single one in the United States. I asked him, Bobby, how can the Italians and the Germans and the Swiss outproduce us in high technology equipment and for use in such a basic industry as the glass and mirror manufacturing? His answer was very interesting and very revealing. He told me that when he went to Switzerland recently to look at this equipment, he saw an unparalleled commitment to training the Swiss workforce at an early age. Not only did their secondary education consist of more math and more science, but they were additionally required to participate in a 2-year apprenticeship program with a company of their choosing. In short, they received a sophisticated training in a specific field at a very early age, which enabled them to become more competently trained quicker and apply and develop new technology faster These public and private partnerships have been in place in some countries for decades, but in many others, like ours, they are just now becoming significant tools for economic growth. While we have already noted the current inadequacies in our workforce and looked at models of successful partnerships, perhaps the most significant reason for coordinated action is to give our economy a long-term solution to its problems. All too often, our businesses and industries are geared towards meeting quarterly profit margins and satisfying investor demands at the annual board meetings. The result is that businesses do not invest enough, not only in their research and development, but also the most important long-term investment of all, the people who provide the workforce, that provide the labor, that provide the machines, that provide the profit. The country that has best demonstrated the importance of this long-term investment has been Japan. Through governmental orchestration, through MITI and JETRO, the Japanese are taught to think in decades, not in months. They pour an enormous share of their gross national product into research and development and into education. They put particular emphasis on establishing an educational network that trains students in math, science, and the skills necessary to compete in a high-tech world. The results, as we all know, have been staggering. The beauty of such an investment is that it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle of success and productivity. The more money a country invests in education, the more it multiplies for future generations when they become the labor force. 20 or 30 years ago, the United States had the luxury of being able to find a domestic market for its expanding industries. Today, in our global village, interdependent global economy, General Motors no longer really competes with Ford or Chrysler. They compete with the auto manufacturers of other countries. Long-term thinking additionally gives industries the means to be on the forefront of new technology. With the rise of overseas countries who do provide cheap, skilled labor, it makes it vital that the United States provide high-tech services and not attempt to provide low-cost labor. I'll never forget a trip that I took recently to the People for Public China, and a visit made there to a joint venture assembly plant for the MD-83, a joint venture with McDonnell Douglas. In that assembly plant, products manufactured in the United States in component form were shipped for assembly. You know, we think oftentimes of assembly in China as being small, put together two pieces of plastic. What I saw there was high-tech assembly of sophisticated jet airplane components into the final product. And I sat in an office of the consul in Shanghai, near where this plant is located, and heard him tell me that not a week before, a Federal Aviation Administration certification crew had been through that plant and seen the first of the MD-83s that rolled off that assembly line, and commented that it was among the best assembled, highest quality assembled MD-83 they had seen anywhere in the world. And it came home to me that those young, and they were young, the average age of those workers were about 22 years old. Those young, skilled laborers assembling that jet commercial aircraft were getting paid in a month about what the American manufacturing worker gets paid in a day. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot compete with skilled, low-cost labor unless we are prepared to train our businesses and our workforce to stay on the cutting edge of creativity and of innovation. That's where America excels. That's where Virginia excels. That's where our strength is. And we're going to have to play to our strength. And we are not going to play to that strength unless we are prepared to commit the energy and the effort and the resources to educate in partnership between business and education the workers that possess the kinds of skills that can continue to be creative and innovative and understand the needs of the high-tech assembly line. There are examples right here in Papua of this result of current demands of available technology. And the Commonwealth, through the Port Authority, took a bold gamble and invested tens of millions of dollars in the high-tech Port Authority facility that you see every day. And it paid off. Because today, that high technology is attracting over 23 new shipping lines just in the last 18 months or so. It has significantly decreased the offloading cost and the onloading cost, and continue today to draw more and more shippers, and that means more and more jobs to the Tidewater area of Virginia. Another successful example of long-term thinking here is Newport News Shipbuilding and Dry Dock and their apprenticeship school. Every year, the company recruits, trains, and puts to work hundreds of individuals. They make the investment to train the students at a high skill level that will be demanded of them once they join the labor force. The result is a symbiotic relationship, mutually beneficial to the individual and to the industry. I join with Secretary Dyke in asking each and every one of you to join with me, join with us, join with Dr. Templin, join with the industry task force and those in business who agree and feel deeply with them in a partnership to create consistently the kind of workforce that we need in Virginia to truly compete in the global economy. If you are successful, and it is you, because it is you that educate this workforce. If you are successful, you will lead not only here on the peninsula, but you will lead in the Commonwealth, and you will lead in our nation. You will set the pace, and it starts here. It starts today with these initiatives. Dr. Templin, as I close, I want you to know that there is nothing more important than what you and your colleagues and your task forces are doing, because it is you that are creating the tools with which we will either be able to compete or be unsuccessful in competing in the world marketplace. I give you my support. I wish you well. I look forward to using your efforts as a model statewide, and I thank you for the honor and the privilege to be here and share this talk with you this morning. Thank you very much.
We've come to the portion of the program, and Howard, you correct me if I make an error here, where the next part will focus upon eating and reflecting, interacting, and then sharing some of the recommendations that we've learned here today together. Those of you that have been part of the conference and are educators in the audience, you will be meeting at lunch in Regency 2. And those of you that have joined us for the Chief Executive Officer's business lunch, that will be in the Hampton Room across the way. Again, thank you for participating. Thanks to our guests today for their encouraging words of support. It makes me proud to be on the peninsula. Thank you very much.